How ethnically diverse is Sri Lanka? Is Sri Lanka just limited to having Sinhalese, Tamil, and Muslim communities? Before we understand why this statement is completely reductionist and misleading, it's important to understand Sri Lanka's place in the world. Sri Lanka is an ancient country with a vast history, but it's also in the middle of the world's trading routes, particularly shipping trading routes. It's the reason why Sri Lanka's ports are so ancient and revered around the world, and also contested on international geopolitical circles. And when you begin to look at other countries which are also in similar places on ancient trading routes, you begin to realize that populations in those countries are extremely multicultural and diverse. They're also very diverse in their languages, food, and cultural norms. And in this way, Sri Lanka is no different. You see, Sri Lanka's first ever census was commissioned in 1871 during the times of British Ceylon. And this census identified at least 79 different places and regions from which Sri Lankan people originated. There were people from Portugal, the Netherlands, England, France, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, and so many other places in Europe and the British Isles. There were Bengalis, Brahmins, Carnatic people, Chettis, Marathas, and Pathans or Afghan Sri Lankans from present-day Afghanistan. There were also people from the greater Sindh region. There were Moors from the Middle East, people descended from Turks, Parsis, Jewish Sri Lankans. There were Javans and Malays from the Malay Peninsula and modern-day Indonesia. The slave trade, which was thriving in Sri Lanka historically, brought people from the African continent as both soldiers and slaves, and also people from the Philippines and even Papua New Guinea. There were Americans, Canadians, and also people from the Chinese communities of modern-day China. There was also a sizable population of people who had mixed amongst each other, known in those times as mestizos, the Portuguese word for mixed people. And all these communities settled in Sri Lanka and continue to live there, influencing our culture and history. And there are many I haven't mentioned here, and I would really recommend having a look at that original census. It's really enlightening. Now, let us all not forget that the original Sri Lankans, the first ever and oldest ethnic group to have settled in Sri Lanka, it's not the Tamils, it's not the Sinhalese, it's none of the ethnic groups I've mentioned yet, but it's actually the Vanyaletho, or the indigenous community in Sri Lanka, sometimes known as Adivasi Sri Lankans. The modern population of Sri Lanka consists of a combination of all of these different peoples who mixed with each other linguistically, culturally, genetically, in order to create the vast diversity of ethnic groups we have in Sri Lanka now, but also to influence the mixed culture that we currently enjoy. Several DNA studies, historians, as well as professors of anthropology have identified this mixed nature of the Sri Lankan population. Sri Lanka has a rich mixing of naming traditions, and most families will have individuals with naming conventions from different languages and cultural groups, all within the same family. My own name is a very good example of this. My first name, Jerome, is of French and Greek origin. And then my middle name is of Hindu origin, so it's a name from Hindu mythology. And Pereira is a Portuguese name. Similarly, you might notice people with name prefixes like Don or Donna or Sinho. These names are of Portuguese origin. Then there are the combinations of languages we have in Sri Lanka. For example, Sinhalese has thousands of words from Portuguese, Malay, Dutch, English, Malayalam, and Tamil. And of course, Sri Lankan food, which is so amazing, amalgamates cultures and cuisines and cooking traditions from all around the world to create what we now appreciate and love as Sri Lankan food. Portuguese love cakes and wedding cake, dodol and sambal from Indonesia, bread, which still has the Portuguese term pang referring to it, lamprais and iced coffee, and hoppers and indiappa from the southern parts of India. These are all examples of the rich multiculturalism that has come to symbolize what we understand as modern Sri Lanka. And then there are fruits and vegetables. Cashews, tomatoes, jambu, corn, and pumpkin were all brought to Sri Lanka from various cultures from around the world. All these all these fruits and vegetables I've mentioned originate in North America and were brought to Sri Lanka by the Portuguese and various other settling communities. And there are many, many, many more influences from all of these communities, not all of whom were colonials, that have all influenced what we understand as modern Sri Lanka. Now, viewed in this light, it's terribly reductionist to imagine that Sri Lanka is made up of just 3 ethnic groups or 3 distinct communities, the Sinhalese, Tamil, and Muslim communities. And it's important that we study and appreciate the rich multiculturalism that we get to experience in Sri Lanka. Now, this is a topic that's very close to my heart, and it's something that I really love studying and learning about. And I'll be making many more videos on this subject as time goes on. And if you're interested in understanding Sri Lankan multiculturalism and diversity, I highly recommend that you look at the work by the great Karim Zamir. He has a series called The Lost and Forgotten, which you can find on YouTube, but was also aired on Sri Lankan TV. So what are your thoughts on multiculturalism in Sri Lanka? Have you heard of these ethnic groups? Are you familiar with the history of the different foods and cultural practices we enjoy in Sri Lanka? Comment down below and let's start a discussion about this important topic.